Hello, I'm Jeffrey Coleman, AIPAC's Deputy Director for Policy and Government Affairs, and it's a pleasure for me to welcome our guest today, Senator Ben Cardin, a Democrat from Maryland, and Senator Rob Portman, a Republican from Ohio, both of whom serve on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and who are veteran pro-Israel leaders in both the House and now in the Senate. Senator Cardin, Senator Portman, welcome. Thanks for being here today. So shortly, we're going to talk about some very serious issues like the international legal assault against Israel and some of the positive opportunities of the Arab-Israeli normalization. But I wanted to start out sort of talking a little bit about politics and the partnership that the two of you have developed. It's no secret to you or any of us how polarized our country is and how paralyzed Congress has been in recent months and in recent years because of that hyper-partisanship. And yet, time and time again, the two of you have found areas where you can collaborate on and work on. And I understand this sort of strange bedfellows partnership of yours go back to your days in the House. So let's start with you, Senator Cardin. Could you tell us a little bit about how your collaboration with Senator Portman began? And for both of you, how did the two of you, how and when did the two of you decide to put aside your differences and decide to cooperate and collaborate on issues? Senator Cardin, you first.
Well, first, Jeff, it's good to be with you. We thank AIPAC for what it does in strengthening the important tie between Israel and the United States, important to both of our countries, Israel and the United States. Rob Portman's a serious legislator. He wants to get things done. I've been a legislator for a long time. I like to get results. Both of us are pragmatic. We want to see legislation, good legislation, reach the finish lines. So we've taken on issues together. We've worked together on pension reform. We've worked together on the reform of the IRS, and we have worked together in regards to the U.S. Israel relations. And it's a pleasure to work with him. He's a person who is very straight, very direct about his views. He's a person who listens and wants to get results. He respects my view. I think I respect his. And the bottom line is that we want to work together to get things done for our country. And I'm going to miss him next year because this is his last year in the United States Senate. Right. He's been a great partner and friend, and I know our friendship will continue, but I'll miss his presence in the United States Senate.
Senator Portman, your take.
Well, I think Ben just felt sorry for me. So when we were on the Ways and Means Committee together, he said, here's this Portman kid, he's coming along. And Ben, I remember Bill Gradison, who was my predecessor, told me about you, and I think he told you about me, and that helped. So look, you hire somebody to be in the United States Congress, whether it's the House or the Senate, to work for you and get things done. And that's the attitude that I saw in Ben Cardin. I knew that he was someone who, although we were going to differ on some issues, that his objective was to help the people he represents in Maryland and around this country. And in terms of our work together, that's exactly how it has unfolded. We don't always agree at the outset, but we start from square one, building legislation together. And that includes some of the good work we've done with regard to Israel, some of our work on the boycotts, divestment, and sanctions, BDS work. I work now with the ICC and the Human Rights Commission. As you know, Jeff, as you said earlier, the litigant assault on Israel. We've also worked on the Israeli Relations Normalization Act. We got that signed into law by President Biden. So I think we found in each other someone who wants to get something done. And you're right, it's too rare in Washington, but it's not non-existent. There are other members who also share that objective, and I think those are the ones that need to be held up and supported.
Well, I have my own personal anecdote, which I remember 7.5 or so years ago, maybe 8 years ago. I was in a meeting with Senator Cardin, and you all were working on the Trade Promotional Authority bill in the Senate Finance Committee, another committee where the two of you serve. And we threw out sort of an idea on something to do on the boycott against Israel on BDS. And Senator Cardin said, that's a great idea, but you need to go talk to Senator Portman first because I want to work with him on this, and he's the former U.S. Trade Representative. And of course, that began, Senator Portman, our collaboration with you and the two of you on this issue. So let's talk a little bit about BDS and more broadly, the efforts to delegitimize Israel internationally. Sometimes it happens with boycotts. Sometimes it happens in the Human Rights Council, in the International Criminal Court. The two of you have led Senate initiatives in all of these areas. Let's start with you, Senator Portman. There seems to be a double standard when it comes to Israel at the UN and other agencies. Israel, no more than the United States, is a perfect country, but when it comes to Israel, it seems that there's like a completely different standard, and horrific serial human rights abusers not only serve on the Human Rights Council, but are the ones leading the attack against Israel. So where do you think this all comes from?
Well, first of all, you are right. On the Human Rights Council itself, there are some major violators of human rights, but also those who are in the UN more broadly who support these actions against Israel. And of course, that's inconsistent, hypocritical, and they do single out Israel for a double standard. I, I will say it's also odd to me because with regard to the UN Human Rights Council, and Ben, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that of all of the investigations that they have entertained and all of the inquiries that they have put out there, half of them involve Israel. So think about what's happening in China today, or what's happening in North Korea, or any other names of countries where you have an authoritarian government, countries in Africa where you have human rights violations consistently. Half of the resolutions of the Human Rights Council have been about one country,
Right.
Israel, which is the only democracy in the Middle East, at least by my estimation, and it is a country that has human rights protections in place, including the ability of people to gather freely and to express themselves. So I think it's I think it's an effort to, I think it's a political effort. I don't think it has to do with the merits. But Ben, I'd like your views.
Well, Jeff, let me just underscore what Rob has said. First and foremost, the effort in the UN Human Rights Council is a discriminatory action against Israel. Since I think it's been in the last several years, since 2006, there's been over 90 anti-Israel resolutions passed by the United Nations Human Rights Council. Last year, they established a permanent commission on investigation of Israel, the only such commission. It does not include Hamas. It is outrageous the way they discriminate against Israel. So this is clearly an effort to talk about the legitimacy of the state of Israel. And when you look at the origin of the BDS movement, the origins are based upon those who do not want to see an Israeli Jewish state in the Middle East. It's aimed at trying to deal with the legitimacy of that state, and it is directly aimed at trying to prevent direct negotiations between Israel and the Palestinians for a peace process, but rather to try to do it through these international efforts. So I'm proud to partner with Senator Portman. You mentioned your first engagement in my office. That's when we were able to get in trade promotional authority. Yeah. As a primary objective that our trading partners would not support the BDS. We were able to get that done by near unanimous vote in the Congress. It is part of our law today. And quite frankly, talking about how we can work together to get things done, it wasn't enthusiastically embraced by either administration for us to dictate what they have to negotiate, but it was an important progress that we made in fighting the discriminatory actions against Israel.
Oh, I remember it. I remember because the two of you refused to let the markup of that bill proceed without getting a vote, which ended up being unanimous at the end on your amendment, and no other amendments got through, controversial or otherwise. So we remember your leadership on that. But we also, but also just a month or two ago, the two of you led that Senate-wide letter against the Human Rights Council Commission of Inquiry, Senator Portman, Senator Cardin, yep, that you just spoke about, to have a permanent commission on only one country in the entire world, no time limit, no starting date, and no stopping date is really quite outrageous, isn't it, Senator Portman?
No, it is. It's unprecedented, and it was the Human Rights commission decision to make this just about Israel and Palestine and about war crimes, and not to put any parameters on it. The only country-specific item on the agenda,
Right.
period. So it does show a double standard, and it's unfair. It's unfair to Israel. It's discriminatory toward Israel. By the way, when we have done this, and we kind of do it perennially, because remember last March we
Right.
wrote a letter with regard to the ICC,
Right.
International Criminal Court, and we get a lot of members to support. It's sort of like your story about the trade agenda. When Trade Promotion Authority was before the United States Finance Committee, we were told the administration opposed our amendment. We were told by the committee staff and leadership that it was not going to pass, and no need for us to offer it because it wasn't going to pass anyway. And we insisted, and then we made our arguments. And this is where AIPAC was very helpful, because you guys had apparently been able to persuade some people on the merits of it. So when the vote took place, no one was more surprised than Ben and me to find out that we not only won the vote, but it was unanimous.
Right.
And thank goodness we stuck to our guns. We kind of thought we're going to make a statement here for the future, hoping this could get into a bill in the future. But it was, I mean, when it gets right down to it, I think most people in Congress believe in fairness. And when you lay out the facts, as we did, and as you all did in your meetings, individual meetings with individual senators, it ends up making a huge difference. And now you have a situation where if someone wants to take advantage of the benefits of trade with the United States, and particularly a free trade agreement, which a lot of countries are interested in, they have to look into their own laws and come up with an answer as to how they get rid of their boycott, divestment, sanctions legislation. And as you know, Jeff, I've been through this before. When I was U.S. Trade Representative,
Right.
we did this with Bahrain and Oman, and with Saudi Arabia too, in a
Exactly.
sense, because they wanted to go into the WTO, and we stuck to our guns, and eventually, fairness prevails.
Well, one thing that I've admired about the two of you individually, but also as a team, is you're both tactical and strategic. So let's move on to the positive developments in normalization, because I think it directly relates to what we've been talking about the international assault against Israel and delegitimization. Because what I've seen the two of you do is, yes, lead letters, lead initiatives, lead resolutions, in the Congress against these type of things and getting 68 senators. But the other thing I've seen the two of you do is realize that the best way to counteract this narrative is to build greater cooperation with Israel, to show that Israel is quote unquote a normal country that can have expanded trade relations, commercial relations, high technology, so on and so forth with its neighbors. So maybe let's start with you, Senator Cardin. One or the both of you, I think, mentioned the Israel Relations Normalization Act, which just got enacted into law a couple months ago. The two of you, along with Senator Booker and Senator Young, led that effort in the Senate. This is really extremely positive, building upon the Abraham Accords, which were reached in the last administration. So let's start with you, Senator Cardin. What more, and I also should mention that the two of you went to Israel and the Arab world last fall together to learn more about this and to see if you could come up with more ideas. So here we stand a year and a half or so after the Abraham Accords. What more, Senator Cardin, do you think can be done to expand the relationships with the existing Abraham Accords countries, but maybe find other potential partners of Israel in the Arab and Muslim world?
Well, Jeff, Senator Portman and I were in Israel in November. We did meet with the ambassadors from the Abraham Accord countries to Israel. We had a chance to have conversations with them as to how we can advance that relationship. We've also had opportunities to meet with some countries that are not part of the Abraham Accord. We had a meeting with one of Israel's partners, President Abdullah of Jordan, who shared with us in a closed session the type of openings are now available in the Arab world for a much closer relationship with Israel. That we are now getting beyond the three no's, the no recognition, the no negotiations, the no peace. We're getting to the point where the Arab nations see their future with Israel, economically, with energy, with dealing with so many other issues. So the the Negev summit that took place with Secretary Blinken in March, this is now a permanent structure in the Middle East to deal with issues such as security, energy, to deal with tourism, health, education, food, and water. So there's lots of opportunities. I was in UAE. UAE sees their future in energy, but not fossil fuels, but in renewable energies. And the technology and they see coming from Israel. And they're partnering with Israel right now on their future on energy, renewables. So this is the type of partnerships that we see. The Israel Relations Normalization Act requires the administration to give us reports as to how we can expand the number of countries with normal relations with Israel, how we can offer incentives to expand the numbers. And I think there is incredible opportunity now to normalize Israel's relationship in their region, which is going to be certainly good for Israel and good for the United States.
Senator Portman, your views on that?
Well, first, I was delighted to see these other Arab ambassadors come together when we were in Jerusalem together. And this was a congressional delegation trip that Ben Cardin led. And his wife Myrna and my wife Jane are close friends as well. And it was just a wonderful trip in so many respects, but probably the most important of which was seeing this new relationship. These ambassadors who came to our ambassadors' residence probably had never been together before with their Israeli counterparts, at least so they said. And you see at this Negev summit, which occurred just a couple months ago, two of the country's foreign ministers had never been to Israel before, period. So, I mean, this is really opening up a new line of communication that goes beyond the commercial and economic and military benefits of this. It's personal, that they're getting to know each other. And I think Israel's long-term survival depends on that, particularly in the face of what's going on in Iran. And let's be honest, one reason you do see countries coming forward and being willing to join this normalization effort is because of their fear of Iran. And, that it's real. So if you're in Bahrain or Egypt or Morocco or UAE, for that matter in Jordan, even though the King of Jordan chose not to come to Negev, he wants to continue to be, as he told us, more of an interlocutory with the Palestinians. We'll see how that goes. But these countries are very concerned about Iran's ambitions, but they also realize that it's in their economic interest, even forgetting the military threat from Iran, to ally with Israel. Ben mentioned energy. That's one of the big opportunities. Another one that they've talked to us about, and we met with the King of Jordan, is desalination. So it's the water issue, more broadly about water and how to use it more efficiently. But this is a survival issue for so many of these countries in the Middle East. And the Israeli technology to take ocean water and make it into potable water that you can drink, potable, and use it also for other purposes, as how they recycle the gray water for agriculture and so on. I mean, this is technology they absolutely need. So it in so many respects, this makes sense for these Arab countries. And that's why it's going to last, I believe. Negev is supposed to be an annual event. I think it will be. And I think more importantly, in between the two summits, there will be more and more interpersonal communications, but also commercial ties that will be deeper and stronger. And so I'm really excited about that, as concerned as I am about what's going on with Iran, and particularly with regard to what might happen in Iran if we move forward with this nuclear agreement. But that's a topic for another day, perhaps.
Well, you both basically are saying that this is not a sentimental peace or normalization, that all the sides are coming together for security reasons, which you mentioned, Senator Portman, Iran, and we could mention 10 others, but also for trying to do things for their people, the economic and social development of their people, and that they see this relationship with Israel giving promise. So maybe, Senator Cardin, let's end with you on this. Israel recently, just a few weeks ago, celebrated its 74th birthday, and so much of that history has been about war and aggression and terror. It seems like there's a new narrative. All of that hasn't gone away, unfortunately, but it seems that there may be a new narrative developing in addition to the threat narrative about Israel. Is that the way you see it?
Well, yeah. So as I think I said a little bit earlier, I think its neighbors, most of its neighbors, recognize its future is with normal relations with Israel, that they can increase their economic security, they can increase their national security by having a normal relationship with Israel. So we see the Arab Accord countries. We, of course, always had Egypt and Jordan, but that is expanding. The major security threat in the region is Iran. And that's not just to Israel, but that's to the region itself. So that's also bringing countries together in the Middle East. When you visit Israel, and there's now more and more of its neighbors sending their diplomats to Israel, you see a vibrant economy. You see so much potential for the future. You want that technology. You want that investment. You want that partner in your country's future. So I think Israel's offering a very attractive partnership with countries in the region. So yes, I see the future as one in which we're going to see more harmony. Obviously, the long-term conflict with the Palestinians is an area that's going to require some leadership and diplomacy. We all are trying to keep that process alive. We had many conversations with the Israeli government on this. Senator Portman and I met with every major leader in Israel during our CODEL. They all recognize that they need to advance the peace process, so we need to do that. But I really do think the future looks bright, but we recognize that this is a dangerous world. The Middle East has dangerous players, particularly Iran. We see the rise of terrorism, not only in the Middle East, we see that even in our own country. So the risk factors are still there, but I'm much more positive about Israel's relations with its neighbors than I have in many decades.
So perhaps that's a great point to end, both a promising note, but also a cautionary note that both of you have talked about. And so, Senator Cardin, thank you so much as always. Senator Portman, as your colleague said, we will miss you next year, but there's still plenty of time this year to continue to work together on these and many other issues. So thanks to both of you.
Will do. Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate your time today. Great to be on with everybody.
Thanks.
Okay, all the best to both of you, and we will see the rest of you back in the near future on the AIPAC app. Thank you very much.